Could you tell us your name?
Larry Zettler.
And when did you move to Greenhills?
When did I move to Greenhills? I moved to Greenhills in October of 1942 as an infant.
Sorry. When did your family move to Greenhills?
They moved in 1938.
Was there a particular reason that attracted them to the town?
Yeah, they were living in an apartment in Hamilton, and they were on the second floor. The neighbors downstairs on the first floor, obviously, were interested in taking a look at Greenhills, and they wanted their neighbor upstairs to come down, which would have been my parents, to come down and take a look at this new development that was being developed under the auspices of the government. So they came down, took a look, and they were just absolutely overwhelmed at what they saw. Underground wiring, electric appliances, things that they were not used to seeing in Hamilton. So they were immediately attracted to the village. They liked the layout of the village, and it was love at first sight. So they moved in 1938, and they were one of the first families to move in.
Tell me about your family. What were their previous jobs?
My mother's always been a stay-at-home mom, and my dad was working for Pittsburgh Plate Glass, which was a paint company at the time. And when the war broke out, he was able to get a job at Wright's Aeronautical, which is now General Electric on I-75 in Evendale. And because he was involved in manufacturing war equipment, specifically aircraft engines for the fighter pilots and the bombers, he received a divert from actual draft. So he never served in the military, but he served in the war capacity in manufacturing war supplies.
Where was this factory located?
On 75 in Evendale at the General Electric plant.
Did you have any siblings or?
I have a younger sister and an older sister, and my older sister moved into the village as an infant. She was like 2 years old when they moved into the village. So.
What was your house like?
It was incredible to me because I grew up in it as an infant, so it was overwhelming to me. But as we got older, we realized that it was very small, but it was very efficient. The way it was laid out, it was a very efficient building. There were a lot of benefits to it. Heating was efficient. We had all the culture coverage that you would want, electrical appliances. For the longest time though, and I didn't realize this until I sat in on my sister's interview yesterday, that we didn't have a phone, and there were not very many phones in the area. So whenever anybody wanted to use a phone, they would go across the street and knock on the neighbor's door and ask if they could use the phone. So it was pretty rural and pretty, I don't know what the word is, but we were, it was pioneer times.
Hence why the newspaper often refer themselves as pioneers.
I think that would probably be where that came from. You know, I don't really know the origin because I grew up with the Greenhills Pioneers, and that was our high school logo, and that's the logo I'm wearing here. I don't know what the origin was, but that would be my assumption, would be that the pioneer spirit was, we were out here in this rural area, isolated, and we were all pioneers, developing a community.
Was there any outdoor space available?
Plenty of outdoor space. In fact, the village was designed with children in mind. There were play areas, there were swing sets, there was a lot of open areas. They even went to the extent that they had sandboxes for us. The government set up sandboxes in the area, and kids would have sandboxes to play in until the cats got to them, and they no longer became a wholesome area to play. But yeah, there was plenty of open space, plenty of recreation for children. It was paradise.
What was your favorite place in Bill?
I think, and you'll probably find as you go on interviewing, especially at this age group, was the swimming pool right down here over the hill. That was the place to be all summer long. And I remember early in the fall, we would all start saving our pennies so that we would have enough money to buy a season pass where we could come and go as we pleased at the swimming pool. It cost $9 to belong to the swim club. And that's where we would spend a lot of our time, was down at the swimming pool. And that was kind of the focus through the summer.
Returning to your house, how many rooms were there? Like bathrooms, bedrooms?
There was one bathroom, there were 2 bedrooms, there was a living room, a kitchen, and what they called a utility room, where coal would be stored for the furnace, and that's where the furnace was located. So what would that be, 4 or 5 rooms?
Were there particular amenities or innovations that they used?
The innovations that, as I said early on, that attracted a lot of people to the village was the underground wiring, and it's still unique. It was underground wiring in 1938, and my mom and dad were still using an ice box in Hamilton when they came down here and saw for the first time electric refrigerators. And those kinds of things were, and the way the village was laid out, it was just a comfortable living environment, and it was just an immediate attraction. So everything in the house was state of the art. So it was just, as I said, love at first sight. They just absolutely enjoyed the layout of the community and the amenities. So.
What activities in Greenhills did you participate in?
Whew. Well, because of the closeness of the village, there were always like football games, basketball games. The swimming pool was big. At that time, stickball was big, that modified baseball. Just you name it, any type of sports activities, generally what we did. There wasn't much else to do, frankly. And the swimming pool and the outside activities that young guys get involved in.
Were there any religious centers that you went to, like churches?
And again, I'm harkening back to the interview that I sat in with my sister. There were no churches in the village. The village had no churches. So what they used was the community building, which is the building we're sitting in, and they used the auditorium in the community building, and they shared it with the Catholic Church and the Presbyterian Church. And she was saying that what would happen would be the Catholic Church would come into the auditorium and set up their altar, and they would have their 8 o'clock Mass. After their Mass was over, they would pull out all the Catholic treatments, and the Presbyterians would come in and they would have their session, and then the Presbyterians would finish, and then the Catholics would move back in for their 11 o'clock Mass. So they shared the auditorium in the community building, and that's where was the religious church facilities in the community. And I was curious that there was no churches built in the community apparently, and they came later. So.
Any particular sports or recreational clubs that you participated in?
Clubs,
Yeah.
formally, I played sports with my high school and with junior high. That would be the only organized sports. Although there was a lot of knothole involvement. There were a lot of knothole baseball teams, but I just wasn't a big baseball fan, and I didn't get involved in knothole baseball, but I played football and basketball for the school.
Any mischief or hijinks that you got?
Oh, you're kidding me. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there on tape. Yeah. There was orneriness and rowdiness. Absolutely. Nothing vicious, nothing malicious, not like you're seeing now. Soap windows at Halloween, you throw corn on the porch, those kinds of orneriness. I call it orneriness compared to what we're seeing today. So yeah, there was some rowdiness going on, for sure.
What locations in the village were most meaningful to you?
What?
What locations were, like, what provoked a reaction out of you the most? Like the Greenbelt Shopping Center?
Well, the Greenbelt, as grown up, we spent a lot of time in the woods, and that's what we called the Greenbelt. And it was magnificent. It was Tom Sawyer. There were creeks, there were trees to climb, there were grapevine swings. So we spent a lot of time in the woods. We would build tree houses, build camps. The street next to the street I grew up on was a street called Flanders. And Flanders had a bunch of boys, and Falcon had a bunch of boys, and we would meet in the woods and have mud ball fights. And we spent a whole lot of time in the woods, for sure. It was just a good time. It was Tom Sawyer all the way. So.
What was your experience in the schools?
In the schools? I liked school through the first 6 or 7 years, and then all of a sudden I became disillusioned with it. And honestly, I did not achieve well in high school. I didn't realize the benefit or the value of having an education until I got into the Army and began to compete with college-educated guys. And then I saw, oh my gosh, now I know what they were talking about. Now I know why I should have listened. Now I know why I should have studied. Now I know why I should have done homework. So I was able to recoup, and after I got out of the military, I had the GI benefits, and I went back to the University of Cincinnati and finished a 2-year. I was looking for a degree in social sciences, but I didn't finish because I got attracted to police work, and that's another story. So.
And when did you attend school, and when did you go to
When did I what?
When did you grow disillusioned over? Did you leave or something?
When did I don't understand the question.
When did you attend school?
Here?
Yeah.
I went all 12 years. Well, no, I didn't either. I went first and second here, and by my third grade, Our Lady of the Rosary, the Catholic parish in the community, offered a school. And so I went to Our Lady of the Rosary from grade 4 through grade 7. And then the football coach at Greenhills called and asked me if I would consider coming to Greenhills, because I had to decide where I was going to go. Was I going to go to Roger Bacon, or was I going to go to Greenhills? And so I talked to my dad, who wanted me to go to Roger Bacon. I said I would rather go to Greenhills. I lived right across the street from the community building, which is the high school, and he agreed to let me come to Greenhills. So from 7 through 12, I was at Greenhills. And I enjoyed school. I wish I would have paid more attention to the academic aspect of school, but it's hindsight now. And
did you have like a favorite subject or a favorite teacher?
Yeah, I had a favorite teacher, our biology teacher. And although I didn't do well in his class, we had a physics teacher, a teacher that taught physics, scientific principles and blah, 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 almost chemistry. And I didn't do well in the class, but I was always fascinated by it.
And what was his name?
Earl Arian. Earl Arian was his name. And my biology teacher was Conrad Richardson. And both of them had an influence on me, for sure.
How so?
Well, I think probably in my junior and senior year was where I began to realize that there's a whole big world out there, and it's the things around us should amaze us, and the principles in engineering and in mechanics, and I think that's where I began to become aware. By this time, it was a little late to recoup a real high scholastic achievement, but I graduated, went into the military, and there as I said, I appreciate now the value of education. And so.
And when did you join the military?
I enlisted in 1962. A buddy of mine came to me and said, hey, why don't we go in on the buddy plan? I looked at him like, are you crazy? I'm not going to the military. And he finally talked me into going in. And to this day, I credit him with saving my life, because right after we went in, 1963, 64, well, you know what happened in 65 and on. Well, by 1965, I had finished a complete enlistment, and I got out of the military, and I couldn't be drafted. I wasn't subject to draft because I'd already served 3 years. So I avoided the Vietnam War. I did serve in Vietnam, but I was not in combat. I was in Army intelligence, and that's an oxymoron, Army intelligence. You don't generally associate the two. But I was in Army intelligence, and I had a pretty cushy job.
Who were the people who lived in Greenhills?
They were just average, everyday, ordinary kinds of people. I think that Wright's plant that I talked about during the war, with the manufacturing of military equipment, I think they probably employed a lot of people. I know a lot of people went down to the city of Cincinnati to work. They were just average, run-of-the-mill folks. Nothing comes to mind as outstanding, but they were all good people, really good folks, good people. It was a fine community to live in.
Were the people that were most welcomed and people who weren't?
Were we kind of cloistered kind of, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
If we were, I didn't notice it. We were not very diverse, but I didn't notice that it was planned, or that was our intention to be that way. I think it was just circumstance. I wish we had more diversity, but we didn't. And they were just run-of-the-mill, average, middle-income folks.
Previous interview I did mentions the term sundown community.
Sundown community?
Where they apparently have kids like immediately rush back home at the sundown for the sake of public safety.
Well, we used to play out until the street lights came on. The street lights were automatically, they would come on automatically at a fixed time. And my parents would tell me that when the street lights come on, you have to be home. So to that extent, we would be a sundown, but I'm not familiar with that term. I don't think I've ever heard it associated.
Were there any religious or racial differences from the people who came here? Because I've heard of like several Jewish people who once lived in Greenhills.
Again, I would not be aware of that. We had Our Lady of the Rosary, which was the Catholic church, and the Catholic school was well attended. Then the Presbyterian church across the street was well attended. I'm sure there were Jewish families, but there was no synagogue as such that I was aware of in the village. But I would think that we were pretty diverse. But the racial issue was the most prominent. There were no black families, very few Oriental families, and I don't think that was purposely intended as to discriminate against. I just think that's the way we evolved, and that's the way we came to be. I can't imagine a prejudice, an intended prejudice, but who knows?
Were there single people living in Greenhills, like non-nuclear families?
I don't think so. I think most of the families were mother, father, children.
Were there any like former veterans from World War II who?
Oh, I'm sure there were veterans of World War II, absolutely. I would guarantee you there were. Well, in fact, yeah. Jack Malloy Lane was named after a Greenhills veteran. That's this road that runs up to the back of the community building here. Jack Malloy was one of the first residents killed in the Second World War. So yeah, there were a lot of veterans come back to the village from Greenhills, for sure. Getting an affirmative nod from my partner back there.
Were there any difference between what women would do in the community versus what men would do?
I think at that period, in that 49, 50, 51 through probably the early 60s, they were mostly stay-at-home moms. I'm guessing. What do you think? I would say they were probably mostly stay-at-homes. And the traditional mom stays at home and raises the kids, dad goes to work.
Did you at any time play with, mostly with members of your own gender versus those of like mixed groups, like with other women?
Well, the sporting activities were always guy, but you know we would after school was out, we would walk over to the shopping center, we'd go to the pizza and hang out, boy girl, that kind of thing. Yeah.
What was the relationship between Greenhills and Cincinnati?
We were just a satellite suburb. I don't think there was a specific link. The bus lines ran out here, I think.
Because from what I heard, Cincinnati was very conservative when it came to Greenhills as a community in terms of allowing it to be built. Were there any hostilities or outrageous?
I don't think so. If it was, I wasn't aware of it. My sister yesterday in her interview pointed out that when the 37 flood hit Cincinnati, Greenhills was being built, and the government ordered a lot of the workers that were working on the village of Greenhills to go to Cincinnati and provide flood relief. So I would think it would have been a positive thing if there were any relationship. We were at the northern extreme of Hamilton County, and the city is at the southern extreme, so there was a considerable distance between Greenhills and Cincinnati. But I don't think there would be any, if there was any kind of animosity between the cities, I'm not aware of it. I couldn't comment.
Did you ever travel to Cincinnati?
Oh yeah.
Any particular
Go down to see the shows, go down to sports, go down to Crosley Field, at the time Crosley Field, and then Riverfront, sporting events, go to the Cincinnati Gardens and watch the basketball teams, that kind of thing. And then I went to the University of Cincinnati, so I was down there every day.
How did you get from Greenhills to Cincinnati?
Drive. I was able to drive by then. So.
Did people from Cincinnati work in Greenhills?
I don't think we employed very many people. There wasn't hardly any industry at all in Greenhills.
Did any goods from Cincinnati come into the city, to this town?
Again, I'm not aware. I don't.
Okay, now the fun part. How do you think the Greenhills residents were aligned politically when their family got here?
That's a good one. That's a good one. Because again, I by the time I became aware, you know, I just wasn't aware growing up to politics. We didn't pay any attention to politics. You know, I don't know. I would think it would be a conservative Republican area, but I can't say that with absolute certainty. I would imagine it was pretty. Yeah, I'd be hesitant to even say one way or another, but I would lean toward probably a conservative area. But yet, because of the origin, being under Roosevelt and at that period, through Truman, hard to say. I don't know. I really don't know.
Were there any residents that were politically active?
Just internally, just within running for the mayor, running for council. And then we had polling places here in the community, but that participation is limited as to what you can do around a polling area. I don't remember a great political emphasis on either side.
Were there any topics that were controversial or divisive that you can remember?
And again, I didn't pay that much attention to it growing up. I was preoccupied with sports and girls and whatever.
And the reason for this is because Greenhills was often considered a socialist experiment. Was there any truth to that?
I never thought that it was. I thought that it was to stimulate the economy and put people back to work after the Great Depression. So I don't know. I don't think that, I don't get that feeling.
Were they okay with the New Deal program, or was there any opposition within the town?
I don't think there was opposition within the town because that was like the seed that started the whole thing was the.
Greenhills was considered a planned community. Do you think it was used as the way the plan is intended?
Yes. Yep, absolutely. There was a lot of emphasis on ecology, on green, on trees, grass, that kind of thing. Yeah, there was a lot of that.
Did you use like pedestrian paths?
A lot of walkways. And again, I refer back to that conversation or that interview I witnessed with my sister, who was she's in her 80s now, so she was more aware. The gas was rationed. Gas was seriously rationed, so any motorized vehicles were limited to the ability to use. So we walked everywhere or rode bikes.
Was it a completely safe place for children to be?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I think absolutely.
How were the houses designed? Because I heard about that international Bauhaus kind.
And national what?
International style. I know the kind of white surface.
My partner over there could probably comment on that. I'm not sure. Sorry about that, fellas. My nose is running.
I know we mentioned this before, but how did World War II impact the village?
Don't know. Let's see, World War II, I would have been 3. So it didn't affect me.
Did your parents ever tell you about their experiences?
I'm sure that there were probably heartaches as a result of the war. Everyone suffered from the war. Again, I don't know. I was just 3 years old, but I cannot see how the war didn't affect everybody and everywhere. It was so devastating to the country that.
Well, they never told you about like rationing?
Oh, rationing for sure. In fact, I was going to dig up and see if I could find. I found my ration card where I was rationed sugar. Sugar was rationed. There were some other items that were rationed too, but the only one I'm certain of is sugar. And it was a little package, and you would open it up and you would pull out a stamp, looking like a stamp. You would take that to the store and you would lay it down when you rang out your sugar. So sugar was rationed. I know that to be a fact. And I'm sure there were other products rationed. I think coffee was rationed. And I know that there were drives on where tin cans, pots and pans, things that could be used in the war effort were gathered in the center of town and turned back over to the government to used in the war effort. So as I said, the war had to affect everyone. Though I don't have any firsthand knowledge of it other than things I'd heard, I'm sure that it devastated the community, devastated all communities.
And we mentioned this before, but did any veterans returning from the war have signs of like trauma or post-PTSD?
No. But again, I wouldn't be aware of the Second World War, and probably even to a lesser, the Korean War. I don't really know. I know that they used to call post-traumatic shock syndrome shell-shocked, and I knew some people that were shell-shocked, and you could see that. You could see their behavior. You could see the way they acted, and that's what the story was of that. He was in the war and he's shell-shocked. So I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure it affected many. It's.
Can you recall one neighbor who has those kind of symptoms?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, one of the co-owners of our bowling alley had post-war, and he had a habit of clicking, and he would go like this to his nose every once in a while. But he was a wonderful guy. But you could see the effects of, and that's what they said, that Nick was in the war, and that's shell-shocked is what they called it then, but that's what it was post-traumatic.
How did the Cold War impact Greenhills?
Again, I have to defer. I don't know. I wasn't aware. Didn't pay that much attention to it.
Was there any kind of aura of fear, like bomb
Oh yeah. In fact, the building we're sitting in was declared a shelter. Was a bomb shelter, and we used to practice nuclear bombs. Get underneath your desk, cover it up, do this, blah blah blah. Yeah. So yeah, that was always present. And then the Cuban Missile Crisis was in '62, and I'm sure that sent ripples through the community, as it did everywhere. By that time, I was in the military though, so I was really shocked. I was really concerned.
What about like the McCarthy hearings? Did that provoke any divisiveness?
Again, I don't know. That would have been in the early 50s, I think.
What was you taught in school related to the Cold War, like what to do in advance of like a nuclear attack, or anything involving the Russians or Chinese?
I don't know. The Cold War really didn't heat up until, I guess, 58, 59, 60. I don't know. I wouldn't have a comment on that.
And returning to your duty in Vietnam, did the war change you in any way when you returned?
Yeah, it did.
I mean, I know it did for many veterans, but did it impact you in a certain way, like politically or ideologically?
It did, and it was a feeling that I didn't want to have, because I was mom, apple pie, and the flag, blah blah blah. But when I came back from there, I scratched my head and I said, "Why? What are we doing over here? Are we doing a good thing?" And I tried to fight those feelings, and all the time I went down to UC, 68, 69, 70. You know how the campuses were reacting to the war, and I didn't want to go there because I felt like it was rebellious to challenge the government. But then the more I saw it, the more I saw it, and the more I saw the impact it had on the Vietnamese, I said, "What the heck are we doing here? Why are we doing this?" And I've since learned, and this is kind of probably off topic, and you want to edit this out, that Ho Chi Minh was not the bad guy. All Ho Chi Minh wanted was to reunite his country, because they were dominated by the French. And then when the French pulled out, Ho said, "Okay, let's reunite North and South." And everybody opposed that. And so Ho said, "I'm going to fight. I want to reunite Vietnam." And he looked for allies to help him against the French and against the United States. Well, the Chinese stepped up and said, "We'll help you." And that's how he wasn't a devout communist at all. And if we would have listened to him, and colonialism, we needed to stop dominating countries that weren't ours. I'm off on topic here, guys, sorry.
No, it's
turn Vietnam back to the Vietnamese and let them do what they want in their own country. But we said no, and we turned our backs on Ho, and Ho said, okay, the Chinese will fight with me, so now we're going to go to war. And
were there any friends in Greenhills that shared your sentiments?
I'm sure there were. And the guy that talked me into going into the military, I'm sure he did. I'm sure he saw it the same way. Because we were, like I said, mom, apple pie, and the flag, until we got exposed to all these guys are coming, getting shot up, all these boys are being, and then the Vietnamese are paying a horrible price. Why? Why? They're no threat to the United States. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of people had to sit back and scratch their head and say, this is not right.
Did you keep any personal keepsakes growing up in Greenhills?
I've got my school letter. I've got some sports memorabilia. I've got this shirt on that the Alumni Association provided, and yeah, I've got souvenirs. I got my high school diploma, which I'm proud of. Things like that. The things that probably everybody keeps. Pictures of my girlfriend, sporting events, you know.
Are there things you miss about growing up in Greenhills?
No, but I'm certainly glad I did grow up in Greenhills. It was a paradise. That's all I can say. I think because of the greenbelt, because we were completely surrounded by greenbelt, I think we felt like we were cloistered, like we were Shangri-La here. The outside world doesn't affect us. I'm happy I grew up in Greenhills. It was a good upbringing.
And when did you decide to leave? Was there a particular reason?
When I came back from the military, I came back and I began living with my mother again back on Falcon Lane. And I was working at General Electric then, and I met a girl at General Electric, and when we got married, we rented an apartment on Falcon, and I continued to live here until 1973 when we bought a house in Westchester. So I was here from 42 to 73, living and as a resident.
Do you think the town has changed since you were here?
Yes, for the worst. I think we're beginning to see a decline, and I hate it. Some of our buildings are being torn down because they're beyond rehabilitating, and yeah, I think it's changed. It seems to be, well, when I moved out, the population was about 6,900, and now it's down to about 3,000. So I think that social events and society in general is beginning to have an effect on the village. Yeah.
Were there any downsides of growing up in Greenhills, like a little isolation?
Well, you know what? And this is gonna surprise everybody in the whole wide world. But I think we missed out by not having diversity. I think we missed out by not being exposed to the black, to the Oriental, because everybody contributes something. And I think that maybe, I don't know how it would have impacted me, but I think I'd like to see a more homogeneous kind of a racial structure. That could be. I knew a lot of guys that I thought had a lot of prejudice, and I never understood why. And then when I got into the military, I thought, that's wrong, because I was in the military with all races, and we loved each other, and we would die for one another, and I just never understood why we have to have this hostility among the races. I just don't understand it, but whatever. So I think that that's probably about all. And again, it's hard to harken back to when I was 18 years old, 17, 16, because you weren't really paying any attention to those kind of social issues or those kinds of things. It just, I don't know.
You mentioned going into the police after you retired from the community. Was it here or in another part of the?
I was with the village of Greenhills and the city of Greenhills I was with them for 23 years, and then I left Greenhills to go to Green Township over on the west side, and I was over there 10 years. So I've been 36 years as a police officer. Loved the career. Recommend it to anybody that's looking for a career. I've seen things that you're never going to see, or the average person isn't going to see. I've watched people born. I watched people die. My job at GE, I didn't feel like I was touching anyone. I didn't feel like it was warm and fuzzy. It was too cold, it was too hard, it was too big business. And I wanted to do something that I thought where I could make a difference in somebody's life, and I chose police work. I'm glad I did. I've never looked back. I'm happy with my career. It's given me experiences that the average person is not going to see. I could go on and on about law enforcement. And the policemen, by the way, guys, the policemen are not the bad guys. They're not the bad guys.
I particularly noticed one case in 1963 called the Red Holes case during my research. Did that impact the village or personally you?
I was in Vietnam then, so I don't know the impact, but I was the police officer in conjunction with Chief John Selman and Officer Johnson that reopened the Patty Rebholz case. And we reopened that and filed charges against our suspect and had a trial, and we lost. And
for those of you who don't know, can you tell us like the case itself, like who Patty Rebholz was?
Patty was just a high school girl. She was a cheerleader, a very popular girl. She attended a dance at the American Legion and left the dance to go meet her boyfriend. And she was supposed to then meet her brother near the shopping center at midnight for him to pick her up and take her back home. She didn't show up. Her mother and father reported her missing, and by about 5:30, 6 o'clock that morning, they'd found her beaten to death on a lot near her boyfriend's house.
So would you say that that whole idea of it being a safe community was
Shattered, absolutely. It was the first homicide, I think. That is, maybe somebody with more knowledge will be able to say, but I think it was the first homicide in the village. It was in '63, and then we had another one in '67. I believe that was the first homicide in the village. So yeah, it rocked the village, no question about it. I wasn't here to be aware of it or feel the impact because I was in Vietnam, but I'm guaranteeing you it rocked the community. It had to. And she was such a sweet girl and such a popular girl, and her dad was so, well known and just a super family. Her brother was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, so I guarantee you it rocked the community, no question about it.
When did you retire from the police force, or are you still?
2008. That was it. The statement I offer is that the bad guy's always 21. The cops get old, and it's a young man's job. You physically have to be able to do the job, and when you reach my age, it's time to go. It's time to turn it over to the young guys. And so in 2008, I said that's enough. I got to go. So.
What do you think should be done to preserve Greenhills?
I think we need to advertise it as advertise its uniqueness, advertise the way that it was laid out with the center being the shopping center and the out peripheral area being the residential. I think they need to stress the uniqueness of the community, and in that way try to attract a I don't know what word I'm looking for here, just to attract people back to the community. And I think its uniqueness is something that could be offered, and its history, and I really appreciate you guys doing this. I think this is a worthwhile project.
Is there anything you'd like to add that we haven't been able to talk about?
No, only I was going to just congratulate, or not congratulate necessarily, but just comment that you guys, I really appreciate what you're doing. And I think that what you're going to do is you're going to document, and I think it's going to be a benefit to the community. And I thank you for it.
All right.
Is that a wrap, fellas?